Look at that. You can't beat the taste of homegrown asparagus, a plant that takes years to grow in dedicated garden space in order to enjoy the benefits. So when you finally have established asparagus, you better treat it right so you have more asparagus for years to come. Luckily, caring for asparagus is really easy, and I'm going to tell you how in a fast gardening tip right to the point. The number one piece of advice I can give you is do not over-harvest your asparagus. Asparagus, unfortunately, has a very small growing season, and if you're harvesting and you notice you get less and less shoots coming up, stop picking your asparagus. You need your asparagus to grow big like this in order to feed energy into those root crowns. Do not be greedy. My picking season was cut short this year because we had a drought, and without the rain, the asparagus was starting to really slow down. So I made the executive decision to stop picking the asparagus and let the remaining shoots grow. You're going to have about a month or a month and a half of asparagus harvesting during the season before you have to let it grow like it is here. After harvesting is over, your asparagus is going to bolt out and it's going to look like a jungle. That is okay, because when these plants grow tall like this, all these leaves and foliage, they are preparing for next season. They are pumping energy down into the ground and into the crowns that lie beneath the soil. So that's great news because your summer care is absolutely nothing. What I actually do is I let wildflowers and weeds take over his patch. It really helps out the pollinators. The pollinators love the asparagus flowers in here, and then right from there it rolls into various different types of wildflowers throughout the season. The asparagus grows so big that I'm not worried about all these other plants stealing energy from them. And also plants like these goldenrods and various other flowers, they attract wasps. And I had a bunch of praying mantis in here throughout the season too. So predatory insects, it's going to help your whole garden out. It's fall now. We just had our first major frost of the season, and my tomatoes are shot, the beans are shot, squashes, pretty much everything shot except for the brassicas and the peas, cold weather crops. And I just saw something online about someone talking about asparagus in the fall and should they cut them back. So some of the responses to that were, yeah, cut them back and use some leaves or grass clippings and start mulching. But a better idea would be to let your asparagus die off on its own, and when it dies off, it actually mulches itself. Asparagus grows in the wild just fine without human intervention, so in our garden, it's the same situation. We don't need to help the asparagus out. It's going to do just fine. So I will let these plants naturally die out, fall down, and coat the earth, protect the crowns. But there is one thing I do during the fall season here. As much as I love all these different wildflowers and stuff I got growing in here, some of them, like the Queen's Lace, they get a little out of control. So I'll go through here, and anything that's starting to seed out, I'm going to take them out. I've taken quite a few out, but here's an example right here. So here's some Queen's Lace. This was awesome for attracting pollinators throughout the season. Like I said, different flowers, different times of year. We got to use this space. I mean, we're not eating this asparagus right now, so it's better just to let these wildflowers grow and help our garden out. But these produce a lot of seeds. They're starting to seed out. So at this point, I know some have made it to the surface and will grow, but I will be tearing these out, trying not to shake them too much, and I will be getting them out. Anything that still has flowers, I'm going to leave because the bees are trying to get their last food of the year. But stuff like these different types of thistles that are starting to seed out, I know a lot of these have already hit the ground, so I'm going to get stuff like that out too. I like leaving some of the goldenrod for the same reason. Help out the pollinators, get that last bit of food. You'll notice too, if you have an older established asparagus patch, you really don't get any weeds in here because when this foliage is full throughout the summer, it kind of shades out everything underneath it. So most of your growth is going to be on the outside of your asparagus anyway. So it'll add some character to your garden. It's not hurting your asparagus. Do not spend time weeding your asparagus. So let's jump forward now. Your asparagus dies off, it's snowing outside, it's on the surface, it's protecting the crowns. Springtime starts to come. You get to around March or April, around where I'm at, Southeast Michigan. At this point, this is where I'll come back and you'll notice it's kind of dry and rotted out. You don't even have to cut it. It just kind of pops out of the ground. It doesn't hurt the crown or anything. It's all decayed. I'll take those and I'll move them out of the garden. So you need to move them out of the garden because there is a big problem with asparagus beetles. The asparagus beetles overwinter inside the asparagus and lay their eggs, and that's how you get the new generation to hatch in the next spring. But I can tell you, as much as you try to stop them, they will be back. I was picking beetles off for months, throughout the summer even, and they just keep coming back. There's no stopping them. But I noticed they really don't hurt the asparagus too much. So it really was not an issue. If you're in a situation like me, you're pulling your dead asparagus out. I also have trees around here, so they dump tons of leaves in here, which is good because that's another natural mulch to cover the asparagus up. But stuff like that, we have to get off the soil in the springtime. Because when the soil starts to heat up, that's when the asparagus gets alerted that it's time to start sprouting. Having the bare soil kind of goes against everything we know about gardening, but it's important to have that bare soil so when that sun's out, it's going to heat up that soil and your asparagus is going to know it's time to wake up. And when it wakes up, the process starts over again. Harvest those shoots, but don't get greedy. Once established, you can pretty much grow your asparagus on pure neglect. When I moved in here, this bed was already here. I was lucky enough to talk to the homeowner and ask him what he did to take care of the asparagus. He told me nothing. So if you were nervous about your asparagus, worried about losing it over the winter, don't be. Let your asparagus do its thing. Thanks for watching.